Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Ramon Goings with another episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours, where we talk with researchers and doctoral students about their education and dissertation journey and all the great work they have done or plan to do with their doctoral degree. I'm your host, Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of the Done Dissertation, where we demystify the dissertation process so that doctoral students can write and defend a dissertation in 1 year or less. If you're a doctoral student who has spent thousands of dollars in tuition and years of your life going through the dissertation process with no degree to show for it, I invite you to visit www.thedonedissertation.com to learn how you can save thousands of dollars in tuition by finishing your dissertation in months instead of years. We have a very special guest today, Jada Suber, who is a PhD candidate in immunology at UNC Chapel Hill, to talk about her journey as a scholar, her journey past the PhD, and what she plans to do with her degree. And I'm just very excited to welcome Jada to the show. Jada, how are you doing?
Good. How about you?
Good. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. And so just real quick for the audience, I initially ran into Jada's work actually through Instagram. It was like a reel. I just happened to be scrolling. I think I posted something and I happened to be scrolling. And I saw like this great stuff happen, like with you in the lab. And I was like, this is cool. Like, what is she doing? Like, looking more and more into the work, and then saw that you were a doctoral candidate finishing up. So I was like excited, like to see if you'd be a guest to really learn more about your journey and all the work that you're doing. So for our audience who may not be familiar with you, would you please just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the work that you do?
Yeah, so I'm Jada. Like you said, I'm a PhD candidate in immunology at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm currently doing my dissertation research on food allergies specifically, which is near and dear to my heart. Um, More specifically, I study the cells that actually are responsible for causing the allergic reaction. So what I do is basically spend my time growing these types of cells and making them allergic, basically, and then trying to look for different ways to stop the reactions from occurring. So, little things.
That is great. And like, so before we get into your journey, I do have to ask a selfish question. So I have a 3-year-old daughter, and let's see, she initially, when she was born, she had eczema really bad. And so our doctors said there may be a case that your daughter may be allergic to certain things, particularly egg, and possibly peanut and shellfish. And little did I know, at 6 months old, we found out she was allergic to all those things.
Mhm.
Now she's 3. We went through some consultation with an allergist and then found out that the allergy went away. So I'm curious as to why do you think that folks have these allergies to start and then lose them later? Like, what does that all process look like? Again, it's just a selfish question.
No, it's fine. It's very intriguing. A lot of things though I honestly don't know. We're still looking for, but um a lot of times it's more common for like egg and milk to kind of disappear into adulthood. Peanut is actually one of the ones that is unlikely to be outgrown into adulthood. Peanut, shellfish, I think as well.
Yeah.
But I think it has probably more to do with like the food itself, the food protein itself, and how um, just how they work in the body, I guess, when they go in. But it's amazing, like the differences that you see, like even within just the different types of foods and the way that the body responds to them different. It's intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, just from someone not having really food allergies to now my daughter having all of them at one point: egg, peanut, shellfish, everything you can name. And then
Mhm.
now we went through testing and found out that she is not allergic to egg or peanut anymore, which was surprising. I thought peanut stayed with you until adulthood,
Yeah,
so I was very
yeah.
surprised by that.
Me too. But I'm grateful that she did outgrow that because peanut is one of the more difficult ones. So um, egg is actually very difficult too. But a lot of times kids will outgrow egg and milk a lot. But yeah, we don't quite know. We have a lot of theories about the potential things that might have made allergies a little bit more prominent now than they were in the past. But do we know everything? No, we
Okay.
don't. There's so much stuff that we still need to learn. But it's exciting to just be in the field itself.
That's great. And so, how does someone? I mean, if we rewind the time back to when you were younger, was this always something that you were interested in? Like, how does someone go from, say, being in K through 12 schools to saying, actually, I want to get my PhD in immunology and study food allergies? Like, what gets you to that point?
Yeah, so my journey was an interesting one because as a kid, like I always thought I wanted to be somewhere close, I guess, to like the medical field. So when I was like a child, I wanted to be a medical doctor. And then at the age of 7, I actually developed food allergies myself. And so I think after some time, I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll be an allergist when I grow up. Because I think before then I was thinking like pediatrician.
Okay.
So um, for the majority of my life after that, it was I'm going to be an allergist. That's just what I wanted to be. So I went to college and I majored in chemistry, and I was going the pre-med route like
Sure.
the entire time. I was like president of the pre-med club in college. It was crazy.
Okay.
And like some point during college, somebody said in some program that I was in, it will look good for medical school if you do research. And I was like, well,
Mhm.
I guess I'm doing research then.
Right.
So
Right.
I applied to, there were these summer programs that you could do at the Medical University of South Carolina in Charleston. And so it would be like a 10-week long program during the summer. You go stay down there and you could get some kind of scientific research project. And then you have this mentor. And then I think there was a couple of classes that you were able to take too.
Sure.
So I ended up doing that one summer, and then I actually went back the next summer and did it again with the same mentor, like just continuing the project because I enjoyed it so much. And then he specifically said to me while I was there one of those summers, like, why don't you consider a PhD? And I got angry. I was like, are you serious? I told you what I was gonna do. Like, I'm gonna do an MD. Like, what are you talking about? And
Yeah.
he was like, I'm just saying I think you would be good at it. And then he kind of like left it at that. And I was
Yeah.
just like, thanks, but okay, no. Then you like fast forward until like the very end of my college career, and I was still kind of thinking med school, but then I was also kind of thinking research down the back of my head because it was like I enjoyed it, like being in the lab and doing things. It was just like, I mean, you could do this, and technically, what you want to do is in like allergy specifically. You could do food allergy research for heaven's sakes. Like if you get into that, like you could make just as big of a difference there as you could as an allergist. So I was just like, maybe that's what I want to do. But that itself was terrifying for me because it was like, am I chickening out of wanting to go to medical school, or like,
Yeah.
do I really love research? Like, what is happening to me?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it was a very scary time, and then I think I ended up um applying for this post-bac program.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, before then, nope, I take that back. Before then, I actually applied for the graduate school, like a PhD program at MUSC, and I did
Okay.
not get in. And then I was like devastated because I was like, what the heck? Like, I'm not
You've been working
terrible,
there.
am I?
Yeah. 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 You've been doing it.
I've been doing this. Like, what is happening? But then I think the what was it? They said the personal statement that I had written was the shortest one that they had ever seen.
What was it, like a half a page?
It was really short, but it was more so catered towards medical school because I literally had been prepping for medical school. Like I had no idea what to do. It was like last minute. Maybe I just need to do PhD and not the MD. So I didn't really plan for that. And I didn't elaborate in that personal statement at all about my research. I mentioned it, but I didn't elaborate and talk about it, which is, of course, what they want. And so I just remember thinking, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But then I got an email and they were like, we're starting a post-bac program here for research. And it would allow you to consider doing a PhD or MD PhD once you finish. It will prep you for either one. And so I was like, okay, I could do that. That would give me an opportunity too, because I was a chemistry major to kind of like switch up what I was doing anyway, because I'm going from chemistry into immunology. I have before, like at that point, I had never taken an immunology class. Like I had taken biology, but immunology, no. So I was like, okay, this would be a nice opportunity. So I did that, I got into that, and I did that for a year. And I spent a year in a different lab than the one that I had those 2 summers.
Sure.
It was an immunology lab, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. My mentor during that time too was also amazing. So after that, it prepped me. It was perfect. It's like the whole thing. It just worked out perfectly because I went from there to looking more into different schools. Because at this rate, I didn't look at as many schools as I probably should have, just because it was kind of like rushed in the end.
Sure.
But because of this, like, it allowed me to look at a whole bunch of different schools. I got to see what schools were doing food allergy research. And then I put my mind on UNC Chapel Hill, and I was like, this is where I'm going. This is the lab that I want to go to. And it was kind of like, I know I'm going, this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I told somebody in that program that, and before it was over, there was like this conference that included the PI that I wanted to come work with. And so she was like, you can go meet him here. Do you want to do this? And I was like, absolutely. So, I mean, I went and I talked to him, and I was like, this is what I'm thinking. Like, if I end up going to UNC, I would love to be in your lab. And he was like, okay. And I guess the rest of it was history, and I ended up here.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think something that doc students have to take away, even those who are maybe in programs considering the PhD, sometimes you just got to ask people for what you want, and you just never know. You just might get exactly what you asked for. I think a lot of people get scared, and maybe some people in your situation might have been like, "Oh, that's a PI," and put them on a pedestal, and then not go up and have that conversation. And literally, one conversation has changed your life in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So with that, if you can, for our audience, I don't, everyone's not well versed necessarily in your field. So you can talk a little bit about what immunologists do, and what does that field look like for you?
Yeah, so immunologists study the immune system. I think more people might be a little bit more, I guess, acquainted with immune system now,
Yeah.
considering COVID.
Correct.
Think
Yeah.
about antibodies and stuff now. Yeah, it's that's kind of what we do. So there are a lot of different cells involved in the immune system. The immune system is set up to basically protect you. It's your army, I guess you
Yeah.
could call it that. And so the cells that I study specifically are actually called mast cells. And they're heavily involved in the allergic reaction, but they also are involved in other things too, like protection against different viruses and bacteria and parasites as well. So your body is interesting and intriguing, and I hope people take care of their bodies.
No, for sure, for sure. And I meant to ask this too, like, you do in your PhD program, but in the back of your mind, are you still considering the MD? I'm curious because I know some people do the PhD, MD, and combine them. And I was just wondering, like, where I am, I'm a faculty member at University of Maryland, Baltimore County, and so our Meyerhoff Scholars Program. A lot of students end up going to med school, but do the MD, PhD. And so I was
Mm-hmm.
curious, is that something that's like in your mind as a possibility, or are you just like, I'm done with school?
I'm done with school. I'm done with school. A lot of people ask that, and I tell them no, because I'm like, listen, I've spent a ridiculously amount of time in school. I am done. I'm ready to be finished. But yeah, I don't think I'm going.
Okay. Yeah, I was
I don't
just
know
saying
why
because considering your journey, you're like, I was all med school, and then you
I was
switched to go
all
all,
messed.
PhD research. And I was wondering, is the med school part still with you, or are you just like, nah, that's in the past now?
I don't know. I can't tell. Like, I can tell everybody no. I
Yeah.
mean, you're never supposed to say never, but I don't know. I'm tired. It's just,
Understood.
it's tiring. So you get to a point where you're just like, I feel like I'm just an adult student, a professional student, and
Yeah.
I want to be a real adult now.
Understood. I get that totally. So for you in your research, right now you're in a dissertation phase. So what does your study look like, and what do you plan to do for your project?
Yeah. So right now, I'm, I think I'm right before the actual writing of my dissertation. So the goal
Okay.
is to be finished by May, or graduate in May. So right now, I've been currently working on trying to make sure I have the figures that I need for a paper that I want to get published.
Cool.
And hopefully I'll have all of that settled and finished by the end of the year. So by next semester, the biggest focus that I can have, it will be more so on just like, putting everything together, writing and trying to really get out for real.
So what does your process look like? Because like I said, I work with doctoral students across the country in different fields. So everyone's dissertation looks different. So in your field, how does it look? You typically, I see folks do it like three chapters, consider your proposal, some type of introduction, literature review methods. But what does it look like for you? It seems like it might be slightly different.
Yeah, so for ours, it's definitely an introduction, and then your chapters will be based off of kind of like the papers that you potentially produce, or
Okay.
the papers that could be like started but not necessarily finished. That's kind of what the chapters
Perfect.
are, and then the discussion, and then that's it.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. So I have some folks who do like 3 article dissertations, like an intro, 3 studies or 4 studies, and then a conclusion discussion chapter.
Hmm.
That makes sense. And so,
Yeah.
what have you been learning so far going through this process, doing research that, did you feel like that those previous experiences really prepared you for the PhD, or do you feel like you're still learning as you go through this process?
I think it's a mixture of both. I
Mhm.
definitely feel like the experiences that I had all over definitely prepped me as far as like science is concerned, technique wise too. So I had really great mentors during like those summer undergraduate
Sure.
programs, and then also my post-bac program. And they were kind of big on, I'm going to teach you this. Like I'm here with you and I'm teaching you how to do this. And they taught me how to do a lot of things, and I'm grateful for it. Because once you get to graduate school, it's more of a, you end up teaching yourself a lot of
Yeah.
things.
Indeed. Indeed.
um, so I was very grateful for the things that I had learned from them specifically. And then um just, I guess you end up learning in graduate school like how to kind of find things for yourself. It's more of an independent thing. So you figure out how to do it, or you figure out the people that you need to contact to be able to do it. So um I guess that's kind of been the main thing about what I've learned too.
Yeah, so let me ask you about that because I think a lot of students get have a lot of questions about like how to navigate graduate school, right? And so were you someone that was kind of like a solo, like I work by myself, do this, or did you have like a do you have like a crew of students that like, all right, you all share information, you all get through the journey together? Like what does that look like for you?
So it's interesting. So I think I definitely do have somewhat of like of a community,
Sure.
not necessarily like within the lab itself, but more within my cohort that came in. So when we came in, um, they have like this group called IMSD, and Initiative for Maximizing Student Development, because they've changed the acronym a couple of times.
Okay, got you.
I think that's the current one now. But in that group, it ended up being the majority of like the minority students. It's open to any and everybody, but it ended up kind of being mostly minority students. And so within that, I think I got me a decent community that I can always go to just like vent to about how I'm feeling, which is very necessary during graduate school.
Yo, it's
Um, Getting help about like different resources that might be available around campus that I didn't necessarily know about because they've heard about it. So that has been crucial to me because we were very close coming in, which I think helped us out. It's good to have a sense of some type of community because it's just nice to have somebody that you know understands exactly what you're
yeah.
going through. But then on the other hand, when it comes to, I guess, like the science side, I am kind of do it yourself type of person.
Okay,
I'm in a place, or I was in a place where my initial PI, because now I have two, was kind of further removed from the situation just because of like their job and all the different things that they had to do. And
sure.
so it was a kind of figure it out on your own type of thing. And then that's when you learn to pull in the help that you feel like you need. So um getting mentors is crucial to, in my opinion, to your success as a student, especially if that's what you enjoy or that's what you like. You have to know yourself. So being sure, and even if it's not your direct PI, you can always have mentors on other places, just people that you know that you can contact and get whatever information it is that you feel that you need, whether that be scientific, whether that be about your career or whatever. And you can have multiple. So when it came to that, I'm a big person. If I need some kind of help, I'll find somebody.
No, that
And
makes
I
sense.
think I think it's probably one of the most crucial things about graduate school. Having great mentors is very, very crucial.
And so, with that, you've had some mentoring, you've been in the lab. So if you had the Jada Suber lab, right? When you finish, you have your own lab
Mhm.
that you're running. What does that look like? What have you learned about building a lab and building a team that you think you'll take with you as you build your own, if that's something you want to do?
Yeah, if that happens, the biggest thing for me, at least thinking right now, would probably be maintaining structure and community, because structure is probably one of the most necessary things I think I've ever, like, if you have proper structure, everybody is very clear on what the expectations are for
Mhm.
them, from me, for them, from them to me, like everything. That needs to be like outlined and bolded in print. Everybody just needs to know those things very clearly, because that's how you avoid unnecessary situations in the future. So you never want the people under you to be so lost that they just don't know where to go, or so lost that they don't know how to get help, or so uncomfortable that they don't feel like they can come to you, which I guess will bring in the whole sense of community, because I think I thrived the most in some instances when I was in situations where I knew my PIs were like, they cared about me as a person just as much as they cared about me as a scientist. And I think that's a big deal. Because one of my PIs, specifically the one during my post back, he could tell when I needed to eat because I'm bad about skipping meals.
Okay, all right.
Like sit down to talk to him about science, and it would just take me a little bit longer. Or I probably would have my face a little scrunched up and I was talking, and he was like, Did you eat today? And I'm like, no, I'm trying to get this done. And he was like, nope, get out,
It'll
go
always
eat.
be there.
Yeah.
No, that's great that you had that type of support and mentorship because yeah, not everybody has it. And some folks are in these programs that just by themselves, no support, experiencing having
Mhm.
negative experiences. So I'm glad to hear that that has been positive for you in your lab. Um, with that, what do you plan? You know, you doing this research. I'm assuming at this point, have you been like publishing papers and doing all that? Has that been part of your training so far?
Well, last year, around this time last year, I published a literature review. The paper
Congrats.
that I'm working on now would be the thank you. The paper that I'm working on now would be my first author publication. I've been included on like a publication in the past, from the current lab that I'm in, but then also from that postbac lab that I was in even before that. I think I got included on one of those kind of recently too.
Okay.
So I have a few public, not nothing crazy, but my first author publication will is the one that I'm currently working on. But my literature review was that was mine.
That's great. So for the doc students who are like trying to figure out how do I balance getting through my program but still doing the publishing thing, what have you learned about the publishing process so far from your experience that could be helpful for someone else?
It's a process.
Indeed.
It's just, I guess you can start there. It's definitely a process. I think you just have to be as, what is the best word, persistent, resilient with that, and just understand like it's just a process that you have to get through. Generally, like, you spend all this time. The literature review was actually in the beginning for me quite overwhelming
Okay.
because it's like you have all of these different things I'm reading, like this can go so many ways. Focusing in on what part that I wanted to include or have be the main focus was overwhelming at one point, because you can find yourself trying to include everything, and it's like, no, this needs to be more focused. Let's start there.
Right.
And then once you get to that point, just the process of writing itself can be difficult. It can be so difficult just because it's hard to put words onto paper. And I think, especially if you suffer from like being a perfectionist, and I think that's part of my issue. It's just almost like you want it to come out the way it's going to be in the end, and that's just not going to happen. Like, it's not going to happen. So if you feel like it's just trash, put the trash on the paper first, because you need something to start with. So just putting it there, that's one of the things that I've been working on, I think, the most, as far as my writing is concerned. Just putting it on paper, put something on paper, and then you can go back and try to fix it later. But you can't perfect a blank page. You just can't do
That's a
it.
fact. That's a fact, and that's something I tell my clients. I say a lot of times on the podcast is like your job is to get the sloppiest rough draft on paper as quickly as possible. We can work with
Mm-hmm.
everything. It's just like our favorite
Mm-hmm.
song. I know you say you like music based on what I saw in your profile. Like
Yes.
that song that you love, they probably recorded it 50 times to get to that version that we hear at the end.
Right. Oh, so true. Yeah. You just never know how many versions of that song actually exist. You just
Yeah.
don't know.
It's like why not just get it down and then move through it. And so with that,
Right.
I think a lot of doctoral students I suffer from procrastination and perfectionism, right? Sometimes they go hand in hand. But you mentioned being a perfectionist. Like, how have you gotten over that? Because I know for a lot of folks don't get over it, and then they'll be in the programs for years.
Yeah, I haven't quite gotten over it yet, but I am working. So now more than I used to, I'll just type something. And it's like you have to talk to yourself. Like, I know this doesn't sound the way that you want it to sound, but type it. Just type something. So I start there. And then it's crazy because the more you do that, the more you realize, like, half of the time the things that you think is trash isn't necessarily as bad as you think it is either. Because if you like walk away from it a couple days, come back later and read it, you're like, this might not be as bad as I thought. And sometimes it is, but it doesn't matter because you can fix it. Like, it can be fixed. It's not permanent. It doesn't stay on your record for the rest of your life.
Right.
I think that's one of the things you kind of feel in your heart or something. Like, this is gonna stay here forever. No, you can always change it. So yeah, I'm still working. I'm definitely still working. And procrastination is probably one of my best friends because it does go hand in hand with perfectionism, because you're just like, if it's not perfect, like, I can't start it because I want
Yep.
it to be perfect and I don't think it'll be perfect. It's like this vicious cycle. So you just have to do it. So
No, I'm glad you said that. For my clients and folks who follow me, they know I say this all the time. Like, it's a vicious cycle. Exactly what I call it. It's a vicious cycle that if you don't break one of them, you're going to be stuck in it for a while. So I'm
mhm.
glad that you talk about just working through it. And I think what you mentioned about taking a break and realizing that what you had is not that bad is true. And even when I think maybe you've experienced this in the review process, I know when I get reviews back on papers, when I go into the peer review process, and it's reviewer number two just like shreds my paper, and I get this long list of just to dos. Like, I did a presentation last week for a university, and I showed them. I said, "Here's a look behind the scenes as what happens when these papers are trying to go through the process." And I showed them. I said, "Look, reviewer one gave me a paragraph. Reviewer number two gave me 17 items listed on things to do, and then reviewer three had 2 sentences." And that's like
Yeah.
part of it. But I found that if you take a break and come back to it, you look at it fresh. So I'm glad again that you mentioned that with your writing process. So have you experienced that part too in terms of reviewers like coming for your work and trying to manage that?
Yeah, reviewers are interesting. I definitely, with the review that I had done with one of my mentors, it came back with a couple things. They were actually nicer than I think we both anticipated.
Okay.
And I was like, this is a good start. Like, this is how you start into things. Cause I mean, you don't want them to just overwhelm you. But they had like a couple things they wanted me to add. And of course, I was still tired. Then I was like, why do I even have to add this? Like, I don't want to add anything. You get the picture.
Yeah.
But I did it. But with I forgot there was another review that I was actually just like helping with minimally. They like that one got a lot of reviews back. Some of them though were things that I was thinking too. So it was
Okay.
like it helps me to feel better because it's like, well, maybe you're growing as a scientist if
Okay.
you're on the
That's good.
same page with some of these people. But then you also look at it like this is a lot. Like, they have pages of thoughts or changes or ideas, and this is
Yes. Yeah. It'll just be more of that in your career. So just get ready for it. Like at this
yeah.
point in my career, I'm like 60 publications in, and it's just it doesn't change. That's why I tell people once you learn the process, it just hit rinse and repeat, and it gets easier and easier to write these things. But yeah, it's gonna
Yeah.
be that forever, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And so far, you're in your program, but you're getting ready to finish soon. Like your goal is to get out of here by May. So what
Mhm.
does life look like as Dr. Suber? Like what does that look like after?
That's a great question. I'm still figuring it out. So I have like so many ideas. They're like all over the place. I could see myself definitely in some instances, because a lot of times people will kind of stray away from becoming a PI. Every 5 blue moons, I might see or consider like maybe I could be a PI somewhere and have like my own food allergy lab somewhere. I
Yeah.
don't know. And then it's just like, but do you want to do that? I can't tell you. But then I can also, like, I don't think I want to quite get away from research itself.
Yeah.
But then I can also see myself really wanting to incorporate like some versions of science communication because I enjoy that, like making different images to make things easier for people to understand. And I think it's really crucial. If we haven't learned anything else from COVID, we should learn by now how important it is to be able to communicate our science to non-scientists. Like that's a big
Yeah.
deal.
Yeah. For sure.
Um, and there was even like instances like in personal life when you're like scrolling down Facebook or something and you see people like mentioning scientific papers who aren't necessarily scientists, which is great because you're like, they're interested. And then you kind of read their interpretation of it and you're like, this is a little off. But we're the people to blame for that because
All
it's
right.
like we didn't give them the opportunity to actually take anything away from it. Like us scientists sometimes don't necessarily understand certain scientific publications. Like, how in the world
Mm.
do we anticipate a non-scientist to be able to get it? So it's just like I think we need more people like really working to make an effort to just make the science that is out there kind of available for everybody in a sense, just by making it easier to understand. Like maybe include a little something that everybody can take away from it and not just a scientist.
No,
Just
I
because it's
I
just
think I think you do a good job with that in particular. Like on your Instagram, you broke down like the allergy process. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. I was like, oh, this is yeah. The picture makes it say it makes it make sense. Like how it works, how the cell. It was interesting. I'm like, oh, this is easily I could digest this and have a foundational understanding of what you're talking.
yeah. I mean, and I absolutely love that because it's just like I want people to be able to walk away from me and be excited about science and not think I was just saying a whole bunch of jargon so they didn't understand what I was talking about. Like
Yeah,
I'm not trying to impress you to make you think I'm just smart. No, take something from me. Like I want you to understand.
yeah.
Like walk away from me and be like, oh, I kind of get what she's doing, and I think it's pretty cool. Not just oh, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know what she just said.
And do you think you'll continue? Because I think something where it's unique about what you're doing, a lot of, I would say, there are scientists who do this, but not many are able to leverage social media to kind of get their message out in a very creative way. So do you see yourself continuing with that and building that out as you finish up your program?
Yeah, I've actually found that to be somewhat therapeutic in some instances because it's just like a nice kind of change. Kind of sometimes I'm incorporating a little bit of the science part of it. Sometimes it's a little bit more laid back, but I enjoy it. It gives me like a way to do something creative. I really enjoy being creative. I think it keeps me sane
That's
in
cool.
general. Yeah.
Do you ever think you'll take your research and some type of invention or some that route, like maybe trying to figure out something to combat some type of allergy? You ever thought about that route for your work?
I guess we'll see, depending on how it plays out. Some
Okay.
days I don't know what it's doing. Some days it's kind of encouraging. You're just like, I don't know what's happening. But that's normal in science. But I mean, if it ever turned into something in the future, even if something small that I do helps is like a stepping stone for somebody else to get to the next thing, it'll probably mean the world to me just because it'll feel like my whole life was not like in vain. Like me having the allergies and being so frustrated with it as a kid, like I did what I was supposed to do type thing. Like I contributed the way that I feel like I could have.
Got you. That's really great. And so I want to pivot a little bit. So aside from the scientific work that you're doing, you also have an apparel line. I always like to talk to folks who do have a business or things in addition to the scientific work that they do. So if you can tell us a little bit about the work, like that side of you, and how did you start creating these designs, and what was that journey like for you?
Well, I think that's the perfect transition because it just comes from me enjoying being creative. Like I really do enjoy like random things, and people probably think I'm crazy because I like to paint or I just
No, I saw the
love
paint. I was like,
being.
this is dope. Like she's painting the cell that she took a picture of. I'm like, what is this? I can't paint. I'm a musician by training. I can create music. I can do all that. I can play
Yes.
any instrument, but I cannot paint, write, draw. That's not my thing. So I was,
Oh man.
I was
Well,
so cool.
instrument. That's that. If you can play any instrument, that's a big deal. That's a huge deal.
Yeah, with that painting, I was like, she's drawing something. I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah, no, I love being creative because it allows me like a chance to kind of get away from the science. And the apparel line itself was kind of my way that blended the two together in a sense because it was like I enjoyed making random shirts. And I feel like one day for Halloween I made myself a shirt and it was a shirt that I wanted to be. I wanted to be a mass sale specifically
Okay.
for Halloween, and I was gonna wear it to work, and I wanted some little cute, clever thing on it, and I was like, "Yeah, this will be adorable." And when I went to work, people were like, "Oh wow, where you get that shirt?" And I was like, "I just made it." And they were like, "Oh, that's really cool." So I just started doing a little bit more of that, and then I was like, "This could also be a scientific communication type thing too." Like
Mhm.
you draw people in and they're like, what does that even mean? Like, what is your shirt talking about? I have your attention. I'm going to tell you a little bit about science right now. And then hopefully you'll think it's cool. Maybe you won't. Maybe you think the shirt is cute and you just want to wear it.
Right.
Whichever it is, I've kind of pulled you towards science. Maybe just a little. But that's kind of where it generated. And then I ended up just kind of making more. And I love to do little nerdy things where I'm trying to make little cute, clever little phrases or something. So yeah, I just it was a way for me to kind of blend the science in the creative part of me and see if other people would enjoy it too.
That's great. And I think, I think for a lot of folks, they don't consider like the creative side of ourselves. And I just know people who are creative can always make money. That's how I was always thinking. If you can create something that will generate income. So you'll never be broke, as you keep coming up with these ideas. At some point, it gets to a point as a creative, it's like, which ideas do I really want to work on
Mm-hmm.
versus like probably have too many ideas. That
No,
are
yeah, no. I have too many ideas. Like I have a book of like random ideas, and it's just like one day I'm gonna be able to do all these things.
No, that's cool. That's cool. And so, real quick, as we are wrapping things up, what are some advice that you would give to doctoral students who are, you know, the advice that maybe you wish you would have had starting your program, or really getting through this process? What advice would you give them?
My biggest thing is your mentor matters. So make sure you have a really great mentor, whether that be your direct PI or be somebody else, because I feel like that helps you a lot in the long run to kind of be clear as to which direction potentially you might need to go. Getting random advice, even when you don't necessarily know that you need it. I think having a great mentor is probably one of the most crucial things about graduate school in general. So
That is great. And so, for folks who want to learn more about the work that you're doing, where can they follow you and learn more about you?
yeah, so I have a website is jadasuber.com, and I try to include like some stuff on there, a little bit about the research, and I think my Twitter is also linked to there too. My Etsy shop with the little shirts and stuff is connected to that. My Twitter is Jada's Data. Um and then for people who enjoy Instagram, it's a little all over the place because I just do any and everything. I do random painting, random skating, like whatever I feel that day.
Yeah.
Um, it's Jada Pearl 2.0. So
Cool. Perfect. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for dropping in and really giving us some insight about the process, about your journey. And I hope people, again, follow you and look more into the work that you're doing. I hope you stay on this scientific communication route because I think there are a lot of misinformation out here. I think that you can clear up for a lot of people about a lot of different scientific things. So I'm looking forward to the work that you do. So I'm going to put you behind the scenes for 1 second as I wrap up the show.
thank you.
Thank you. So again, thank you everybody for tuning in to another episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours. I'm your host, Dr. Ramon Goings, founder of the Done Dissertation, where we demystify the dissertation process so that you, the doctoral student, can write and defend your dissertation in 1 year or less. If you're a doctoral student that needs support and wants to figure out how to get through this process, I invite you to download and grab our free 10 strategies completion checklist. And what this checklist does is give you some strategies in order to implement immediately so that you can get through your dissertation process. And so if you want access to that, you can text hashtag free to 301-701-2466. And again, that's hashtag free to 301-701-2466. And again, I look forward to seeing you all on the next episode of Done Dissertation Office Hours. And if you have any suggestions for a special guest for the show, please shoot me a DM on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you can find me. Please make sure to shoot me a message about great guests that need to be on the show. I look forward to talking with you all soon.